You're listening to the RE Social Podcast with your hosts, Andrew and Vince from OnV Invest. For more information, go to onvinvest.com.
What's up, you guys? Welcome to another episode of RE Social. Today we have a super cool guest. We have Anna Myers, and she works with Grocapitus. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's awesome to be here. Very excited.
Yeah, we are so excited too. We had your buddy Anil on here a couple of weeks back too. So I know a lot about you because I've been following you online and the webinars and such. But can you tell the listeners who you are and what you do in this industry in like 90 seconds or less?
Sure. I am the COO of two commercial real estate companies, Grocapitus, which is a commercial real estate company that focuses on acquisitions and development, mostly of multifamily, but we also have industrial and some self-storage, and that is in key markets through the U.S. And then the other company is called UGRO, and that is a spinoff from our build-to-rent division. And we spun it off and created an entire new company that is focused just on that insane opportunity. So we do I run the operations of the company. I'm known as the chief plate spinner that makes it all happen.
You know, that's funny because for our small company, Drew is the COO, so he was going to probably maul you with questions. But Can you tell the listeners what you do as a chief operating officer?
Sure. So I am responsible for all of the various departments underneath me. So sales, marketing, operations, acquisitions and development, and all of those departments, and asset management, very importantly, asset management. So all of those departments report to me. Conveniently, I used to be the one that did all of those things when Neil and I first began Grocapitus, because I was one of the few people that helped, start that company. So I played roles for all of that and built the base systems for all of those different departments. And then as I grew, we got people underneath me. So I now have directors in those different areas that report to me. So we're managing assets. We're looking at always looking for new acquisitions. We also are developers. So we are actively developing in multiple spaces around the United States. And then, of course, marketing. We're very well known for our marketing chops. Investor relations, which is also known as sales. And then, of course, operations is a big piece of it. So all of those things are what I'm responsible for. Anything that happens in the company, it basically goes, I'm responsible for making everything happen, keeping everything on track, knowing all of the projects that are going on, making sure they're coming in at the right schedule, that there's no conflict between schedules and employees, et cetera.
Very cool. I want to start with your personal journey, like how you got started and stuff. But just so that listeners can know, we think Drew and I are big shots. We have 30, 40 houses, right? So how many houses do you guys have under management? Is it 30, 50, 60?
Well, we prefer to call them units, and we have over 4,000 units at this point. We have $1 billion portfolio assets under management. So about 4,500 units in all.
Wow. So just a couple more than us. Okay, that makes sense.
Just a few. But, we've been doing it since 2018. So, we might have a couple more years on you guys.
You said when did you start?
2018 is when Grocapitus began. And then UGRO was just born earlier this year.
You have only been doing it since 2018?
Yes.
That's when we started too. Drew, we need to shut down the show right now.
I have so many questions already.
Yeah. Let's okay. So I want to first hit who you are and how you got into that space. I'm pretty sure you had some knowledge before 2018, right? So let's start with that, and then we'll see how the hell did you go from to 4,000 units in 5 years? That's ridiculous.
Sure. Yeah, it is a little crazy. So one thing I didn't mention maybe enough about Grocapitus for those that don't know our brand is that my business partner, Neil Bawa, and I are very much based on data. So we're both tech nerds. We both have backgrounds in technology, and everything we do is based on efficiency, optimizing data, and picking our markets based on data, managing our assets based on data. So we're both systems and process freaks, and we think numbers all day long. So we have that to go together. Now, my background is I actually am the third generation of my grandfather was a commercial real estate entrepreneur in LA. I did not get involved in real estate because I was the youngest grandchild, so I was kind of off doing other things. But he had like a little real estate empire that he built from nothing. So he was flipping houses back in the 30s and 40s. Made himself a self-made millionaire out of nothing. So extremely entrepreneurial, and he started developing shopping malls and all this type of thing. So that's like the foundation of my family. My father's an architect, so we're very much have that as our background. Now, I got into computers. So when I was a teenager, I was 19. I had a baby, and at that time, I was a single parent, and I needed to get my stuff together. And at that time, I found out that I could make really good hourly wage as a programmer. And I've always been an intense problem solver. So I actually was enrolled at UC Berkeley and going to, raising my child, and started working in computers. And that's how I put myself through undergrad and graduate school. So very much involved in computers, and had a career in technology for about 18 years. Became a systems architect and was running huge teams of, developers, programmers, global infrastructure. And then in 2000, the IT industry kind of had a crash. I'm not sure if any of you were, involved or knew any of
right?
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the .com bubble burst. And at that time, I was like, I'm not going to work for this amount of money, because they lowered everybody's wages so much. A lot of it had to do with outsourcing that was going on. And so I said, well, I'm just going to be a photographer. So I always had a side passion of being a photographer, and I actually opened my own studio, digital photography. And for 18 years, again, that number 18, I was a professional photographer in the San Francisco Bay Area, a people photographer. So then while I was a photographer, I realized that I was working very hard. I was very efficient. I was outsourcing and had all my stuff going on, very, very well honed business. But all my money was going to pay taxes. And I'm like, why am I doing this? But it's like, I work so hard, and every year my CPA just says, oh, 40,000 more, 50,000 more. So in order to manage my tax burden, I started saying, well, what can I do? And I realized, oh, I need to start buying real estate investments. So I started investing in single family homes. What I realized pretty soon is that, yes, that helped me tremendously with my tax burden. And I also realized that I no longer wanted, even though I was passionate about photography, I no longer wanted to be in a career that I basically was just working to pay taxes. So I decided to pivot to real estate. So it took me about 5 years to really dig in and learn, go to seminars, read books, investigating markets. Again, I had all these spreadsheets of data on different markets. And I was going to close down my studio and replace my income with real estate. Now, at that time, I was very focused on single family real estate because that's kind of what I knew. When I thought of commercial real estate, I thought of shopping malls and, retail, because that's what my grandfather did. I'm like, I'm not going to be able to build shopping malls. So I was focused on single family. And then I was going to all these conferences. I went to a conference and I saw this guy speaking on stage, and it was Neil, and he was speaking in Oakland, and he was talking about real estate trends and data demographics of markets. And I was like, this guy, I totally get this guy. Like, this makes so much sense to me. So I went to one of his boot camps, which was actually, I think it was the second boot camp he gave. It was virtual. And that's how he and I actually connected, so to speak. And I volunteered to do some stuff for him. At that point, my studio was kind of on autopilot. So I had freed up my life so that I could take advantage of opportunities that were presented to me. And so I was able to take advantage of that opportunity, volunteer to do stuff for him. I said, this guy's an incredible mentor. And fortunately for me, after working with him for a few months, he said, I want to work with you. And he brought me on and became his business partner in this journey. So I went into commercial real estate, which is very different from single family in some very key regards. And that is where you're really able to scale because of the way valuations work with commercial real estate versus single family. And when I say commercial, I'm including multifamily residential. And that is where the light bulbs really went off for me, attending this multifamily boot camp that Neil was giving and understanding the magic of the mathematics behind cap rates and net operating income and how the values were derived for commercial real estate. That is when I would say I am all in on 5 units and above, because that's effectively commercial real estate. That's when you have to have a commercial loan. And that's when things really take off for you.
That's an insane story. So how many SFRs did you have before you went to Neil's boot camp?
Oh, I mean, I had some here, some there, sold some. I mean, I've got some sad stories of short sales and all that type of stuff. But what I was holding, I think, when I started doing the multifamily with Neil, is I had a duplex in Charleston and 2 condos with kind of like a duplex in Oregon. And I was working really hard trying to get more. I was going to Indianapolis, all these places, trying to build up my single family. And so not only did I pivot into multifamily, but I also learned how to, use other people's money to scale. And that's also a big way of making your portfolio grow. There's many people out there that have day jobs. They don't have time to invest. They don't have time to do all the data work. And they're happy to have people that are extremely talented at finding and extremely talented at managing an asset to handle that for them. And so using other people's money is also a huge way of scaling in commercial real estate.
So
listeners,
go for it, Drew.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm just kind of taking notes. Just for the listeners and for me, actually, I'm going to assume your answer a little bit, but for the listeners' sake, I want to know, why did that pivot? Why that hard pivot, that hard shift from single family? Sounds to me like you were like, I'm over that game, and you went hard into the commercial, aka 5 units or above residential is what I'm hearing, right? Why that shift?
It's for me, again, data person, it's about the numbers. So if you were buying a single family home, the value of the home that you're buying, or even a duplex, anything below 4 units, the way that anyone is going to value that building is by looking at comps, right? They're going to look at the comps of, your neighbor, the people down the street, stuff that's sold around your neighborhood. That is how your building is, no matter what you do to it. You can put in nice countertops, sure, you might, affect it a little bit. That's how your building is valued. Once you get to commercial real estate, 5 units and above, it's a different formula. It doesn't have to do with how much your neighbor's house sold down the street. What you do is you're doing a formula that is taking your net operating income. So your net operating income is all of your income minus all of your expenses. Mortgage has nothing to do with it. That's what's called below the line. So it's income minus expenses. And then that is divided by what's known as the market capitalization rate. So how much people are willing to pay for that age asset in that market. So that's a number. It could be, we call it a cap rate. So it could be a 4 cap or a 5 cap or a 6 cap. The magic of that is you have control over your net operating income. Now, you don't control the cap rate because the market dictates the cap rate, but you do control your net operating income. So when you purchase a building, this is called a value add play. Say you purchase a 10-unit building and it has the existing rents that it has. And what you do is, as people are moving out of their unit, they're give you notice. You're like, oh, thank you. It's been great having you as a tenant. You upgrade their unit. Maybe you put in, these days, I have to say it's anywhere from $8,000 to $10,000 to really upgrade a unit. You're turning over the carpets, the countertops, backsplash, probably changing out appliances. And so it's a renovated unit. So that renovated unit, now you're able to rent for maybe $200 more than the previous tenant was paying. Okay. So you keep turning that over time. What you're doing is you're increasing your income, right? Your income's coming down. Maybe what you also did when you took ownership of this place is You looked at all of the vendors and you started reducing expenses. You said, I think I get a landscape person to come in for less than that. I think I can save some money here. I think I can save some money there. So you chop off the expenses. So what you do is you, over time, we call it, you increase your NOI, or your net operating income. Now that's still divided by that same cap rate, but now the value of your building has gone up. You have the ability to move the value of your building by specific actions you're taking. And you can change the value of your building by $1 million just by taking specific actions on a small asset even. So that is the beauty of commercial real estate, is that it's a mathematical equation that the operator has control over. Do you see the difference?
Yep. It's very much a business.
It is. It's a complete business. Some of the other advantages, of course, are that you have multiple tenants in place. So if one person moves out, you still have, in that example I gave, you still have 9 people helping you to pay your mortgage, versus in a single family, one person moves out, or a duplex, one person moves out, you have a much more of a challenge to pay your mortgage. As you scale and you get to have a larger building, depends on the market, but I'll just use the average of 80 units. If you have like an 80 unit building, then your budget for your operations can include a full-time property manager. And so that full-time property manager is on site, taking care of your residents, and really helping to make sure that everything is happening correctly. So that's a big difference than having a property manager over, a bunch of single families that you own, and you're just hoping that they pay attention because they actually have like 70 other single family homes they're paying attention to. So, and that's in your budget. So your budget includes all of that. So again, it is a business. That was a really great way to put it, Drew. It's a business. And if you want to get serious about being a real estate entrepreneur, that's where you need to go. You need to make it a business.
Love it. And now, just selfishly, I'm kind of curious, because we've been looking at multifamilies for a little while now, have not officially made a move in which we are GPs on it. But I want to know, how are you structuring the property manager? Are you giving them free rent, or are you charging them a 50% rent, giving them a nice bump in pay? I've heard a lot of different debates on how to position that person, at what number of units that person needs to be on site. What is that for you guys?
I think that the number of units depends on the market. So it depends on the value of the building. But I would say on average, 80 unit building is a good average. If you have a very expensive market, it could be 50 units. So it's going to depend on your market. But then, do you need to be giving them free rent? I think we might, in our portfolio, we might have one person. I think we have 2 people living on site, but they're not getting free rent. They're getting, a discount off their rent. But in general, you're paying a certain percentage for your property manager. Then you also are paying payroll, because they are on payroll. So you're paying their taxes. And, actually the property is paying their taxes, and they're, all of that stuff is coming out of the property. So all of it is part of your budget, that's your operations. So basically the tenants are paying for the property manager, and all of that stuff just rolls on out of it. I don't think that most of our property managers do not live on site. Now, one thing that we do look at, depending on the market and depending on how valuable it is to that site, we might have a security guard or a police officer that lives on site, and we give them a discount on their rent, because and in exchange, if anything happens on site, they have to get up in the middle of the night or whatever to deal with it. And that can be something that really assures people that are living in the community that they have ready access to help. But again, it depends on the community. Some communities just don't need it, and other communities, it can really benefit you to employ that technique.
So it just depends on the context or the situation.
Yeah, the crime rate in the area. We had one building that was located about 2 blocks from a police station. And this was in a suburb of Atlanta. And it was interesting because when we looked at the crime map, which because we always look at all of that stuff, you could see, crime happening. And then there was this almost like this circle where it's just like there was no crime happening. And that happened to be where our building was. And we're like, why is that? It's like, well, there's a police station right there. So if you have a police station that's 2 blocks from you, maybe you don't need to have a police station live on site, but you do need to look at your crime, your various crime applications and understand the types of crime that would be happening in your neighborhood. So, do you need a security guard on site? Would it be beneficial? Will you attract more tenants if they know that there's somebody on site?
Sure. Wow. Thank you. That was awesome. Very thorough. I'm sure Vince is dying over there wanting to know, how you're structuring deals and numbers. So
yeah, I actually wanted. Yeah. I have some questions I wrote down too. So I wanted to go back to your story where you said, you met Neil and stuff. So at that point, yeah, you had a couple of doors, here and there and stuff. But what was that Neil saw in you that he was willing to just bring you on as a partner? Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's a little crazy. I have a very broad skill set because of my technology background, and then my background running a business for 18 years, running my own business and outsourcing. We are Grocapitus and UGRO. We are avid outsourcers. 60% of our staff is in the Philippines. So it takes and that is all about efficiency, right? We operate completely remotely. We have no offices, and this was pre-COVID. This was in 2018. This was always the intention of the company to have no physical offices. So we were very aligned on a lot of things. And he, I think, well, first of all, knew that with my background, we were a good match. And then as he saw me performing, he saw that I was able to make things happen. And I credit both of us with the massive growth that we have had since 2018. Those 4,000 doors, they didn't just happen. So,
What do you think he saw in you that made him decide to bring you on as a partner? I mean, that's a big move. And I know I'm asking you to brag at this point, but please just tell us what do you think he saw?
Well, before I say what he may have saw in me, I think it's important to reiterate that knowing that I wanted to make a change in my life and go into real estate, I set my life up so that I was able to seize on opportunity when it came to me. And so when he first offered, I don't make salary through Grocapitus. It's all shares of projects. So those first 2 years were extremely lean, very, very lean. But I had set myself up. I had my savings. I had my expenses were very, very low. So I could do that. So the first thing you have to do is set your life up so that you can take advantage of these things, because multifamily is a slow growth. It's kind of like a hockey puck, right? The early years are very lean because all of the money is going to be going to the investors, and that's the way it should be. They're the ones that put their money in and put their money at risk. So the limited partners tend to get all of the cash flow. General partners, you're not getting anything. So right. So you have to be able to, weather that time frame. Okay, so what did he see in me? I think he saw in me that I'm a very, very hard worker, that I'm a very ethical person, and I think he'd say that I'm pretty darn smart. So
what was that last part? I'm sorry.
Smart.
Yeah, nice.
Hey, Anna, so that's cool. So Drew probably doesn't know, but we own a 16-unit. We have a very small ownership, but we closed on a Lakeland property. So I understand the GP-LP structure. So what roles were you taking on the GP initially? So are you raising capital? Are you managing all the assets? Are you bringing the deal? Are you talking broker relations? Do you have funding, banking relationships? Which roles are you doing?
So that's a great question, Vince. So on different deals, we do different things, but for all of the deals we're involved with, we raise equity. So we are normally the major equity raiser. We raise money like monsters. I think we've raised $150 million in the past 12 months. So we're pretty good at it. The other thing we do, which is one of the reasons that our investors really love being with us, is that we always asset manage. Even sometimes when people raise money, they just put money in and then they run off to the next deal. Well, we stay on and we asset manage the deal. Even if there's another partner on the deal, we're going to be at the table with the property manager every week, asset managing, making sure that our investors' money is in good hands and that the business plan that was set out is actually being executed. And again, we're all about the data. The property managers have to show us the data every week, and there's charts, and we have trackers that they have to fill out, and so we can really easily see if we're on track or off track for the business plan, and then make decisions about pivoting if we're not on track. So those are the two things that we always do. Sometimes in some of our projects, somebody brings the deal to us, so they did the acquisitions piece, and they may have been involved in the capital, the closing with a loan. Now, today, we have a bunch of projects where we do everything because we have our own acquisitions and development department. We have our own asset management department. So we're involved in every piece of it on multiple deals. And then, of course, I've mentioned that not only do we do acquisitions, but we also do development. So we buy land. We get the land, entitled, zoned, permitted, get the construction loan, bring in the equity, work with the architects, and actually build the project.
Yeah, so
value add.
I have a million questions, but I know we have 30 minutes. So do you have a hard cutoff at 1 or 12:40, 12:50? Like you have
I can go a little further. Yes.
Okay, cool. So we'll try to cut it off by 1 for sure. So my question is, this will be very useful for everyone listening, is, so one of the most important things that you guys do, that I'm a huge fan of Grocapitus. I'm on all the seminars, right? I'm thinking, why am I even doing all this stuff? Because the IRRs driven I generate is less than what I would get as a passive investor in your deal. So I'm just like, this doesn't even make sense. You're able to do that because you have all these systems in place, right? So I want to touch on a few things. The first part is raising equity. I've been to your webinars. Your webinars are monstrous. Like, it's just crazy. Like, they're good. The reason we own a 16 unit in Lakeland is because I attended one of your webinars. Neil did a long time ago, and he talked about the path of progress between Tampa and Orlando. And that's why. And then we have a 20-year
and Lakeland. That's right. That's right in that corridor. We actually just bought land. Neil and I just bought land in Port Charlotte, which is near Fort Myers. So we're still very strong believers in that whole area. And so we didn't work hard enough to get our own assets there, but now we're making up for it, and we are developing townhomes in Port Charlotte, Florida.
Yeah, so thanks for that. So we're going to have a very small equity position in that deal, maybe 5-6%, but it's a $6 million deal, so it's pretty nice. And we do very less work compared to what we have with our own portfolio because we're doing everything, right? So my question is, how would someone like us, doing podcasts and stuff, generate that kind of audience that you can generate so much equity? We've raised $1 million in 4 years. That's what we've done, right? So we want to expand. So you need money to grow. So what would you suggest that young people like us do?
Well, you're already off to a great start because you're building an audience through a platform, being a podcast. So establishing yourself as a subject matter expert is very important. We don't have a podcast, but as you know, we have a educational webinar platform. But I've heard over and over from people that have podcasts that they learn so much faster because of their guests that are coming in and sharing their knowledge. I've seen people that were doing podcasts from the beginning, and they're like crazy raising money now. There's a lot of examples of that out there. So definitely having a social platform that gives people access to see you. Now, one thing is there's a lot of podcasts now. So you got to stand out from the crowd and make sure that people want to listen to you, and then building credibility and establishing yourself as somebody trustworthy that they would want to put their money in, and somebody that really knows what they're doing. They've got to feel that if they put their money with you, you're going to preserve that capital. Because the worst thing somebody could do is not make what you said you were going to make. The worst thing you could do is lose somebody's money or not return all the money back. So that you've always got to be all about capital preservation. That's your number one job. And then working as hard as you can to deliver the results that you projected to them. Of course, nothing's promised, but we always try and over deliver. So what else could you do? Well, we have a monster marketing. So I would say if you don't have somebody that's marketing driven on your team, you should look at adding that person in, somebody that is really good with messaging and emails and knowing how to communicate. I don't know how well social media is doing these days. I think I've heard Facebook keeps changing their algorithms, and it's really hard to make headway on Facebook. But that's not how we, mostly get our stuff. We attract people in through our webinars and through other stuff, and then we go through ways of nurturing them, letting them get to know us. And I would say from the time somebody comes in to the time somebody actually invests with us, it could be 9 months. It could be a year and a half. So you have to keep going at it, keep growing your audience, because it's going to take a while before they actually invest with you, and keep building that credibility.
So a good portion of your audience is people who are going into it in your webinars, trying to learn how to do it themselves, probably getting to a point where they realize, oh, this is a complete career move, where it's a new business, this and that. And then they realize, okay, well, I've already learned a lot from these people. Why don't I just take that, say, $1 million that's going to invest it with you guys? Is that more or less?
I would say, no, I'd say that we do have a bunch of people that are, they want to syndicate themselves. They want to be active syndicators. That is true. But we also have a very large audience that want to be passive. They love their day job, doctors and lawyers and, all kinds of people that they don't want to change what they're doing, but they want the advantages that real estate can give them. And so they can passively invest in our deals and get major tax advantages and tax savings. So making sure you're able to convey to people the value of real estate. And so, I think we probably have maybe 70% of our audience is actually passive investors, and then the 30% that's active. And the other thing that you need to remember is active investors still need other investments. They want to diversify. One, if I've got a 401k account because, I keep putting money in my 401k. Well, my 401k account, I can't invest in Grocapitus deals because it's a conflict of interest. So even me, I have to find other syndicators to invest my money in, right? So don't think that somebody that's an active syndicator, just because that they're not going to want to invest with you. They may need to invest with you because they can't invest with themselves with certain sources of money.
I see. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, more fun questions. So you raised. So just a little bit of more boasting for Anna's companies. Drew, if you listen to their their webinar, you would just quit and just give them the money. Is ridiculous. Like all the stuff they talk about, like you don't have to convince me after the webinar to know that, oh, they know what they're doing. That's the scam. The scam is they don't even need to ask for money.
What is the subject matter of the webinar? What's the title? What's the?
Well, I think he's talking about our equity raises. Is that true, Vince? Versus our educational webinars.
And then you also do like the market updates and, hey, look at the cap rates, what's been forecasting and stuff.
Yeah, so we have our equity raises, which is when we're inviting people to come view a certain project, and we have a very extensive way, and it's very cinematic the way we put it together. A lot of times you have operators that just basically make a deck that almost looks like an offering memorandum, and they just put up a page, and there's no animation. It's just like all this text, and then they're just like talking and talking and talking. Where ours is much more, it's animation. Things are flying in. We never want too much text on there. The colors are all harmonious. We like to include a certain number of video clips. So it's like a multimedia presentation. We, of course, take a couple of weeks to put those together, and then we actually rehearse them because we want it to be super tight. We don't want to get in front of people and be like, yeah, so yeah, yeah, like
Just leave
you,
it.
yeah, no, you've got to be tight because people lose interest. So if you want to be compelling, engaging, and get your point across, because we don't want to waste their time. So we
Right.
want to keep their attention, and we don't want them to leave the webinar before we get to the end. So our webinars are very, very carefully curated to be 40 to 45 minutes long, and then start questions. And I'm talking about our equity raise webinars. Okay.
Got it.
So that way, if you have a 60-minute webinar and you're just going on and on and on and on, you're going to lose people. They're like, oh, I'm
Yep.
done. I'm done with it. Right. So, so you got to run it really tight. And that's where, marketing and design come in. I think Neil and I both have very strong backgrounds in that.
I was just
That
gonna
we have
ask
a
that.
full-time designer. Yeah. I
Oh,
mean,
okay.
again, remember, I was a photographer. I ran my
Right.
own business. I was a photographer. I did and I was, one of the top photographers in the Bay Area for my market.
Nice.
So you learn how to do that and you don't lose it. And Neil is a monster marketer. So we have
Nice.
a full-time designer that is on our crew that does all of our PowerPoints, and we get a lot of kudos for our PowerPoints. She's pretty amazing. Now Neil is a very avid content creator. He loves to teach, and so all of that content he's coming up with, I think we stand out because we come up with unique content. We're not just out there doing the same thing everybody else is doing, but
Mhm.
we're actively engaging in, how does climate change affect real estate? What's coming up with interest rates? And he loves getting into all that stuff. And then we've got the team on site where he can just dictate to them and they're just producing the slides. So,
That's cool.
so yeah.
Is that team? I've been considering some kind of VA option myself. And you said 60% of your staff is in the
Mhm.
Philippines. What exactly are they usually staffed with doing? Is that your marketing director you were talking about before, or is that like more
No,
local?
our marketing director is in the US. I would say that the majority of our director level is US staff.
Hmm.
And then we have managers and below, so not just the lower level, worker bees, but we also have management that is in the Philippines. And I think that's very important. You don't want to, we're a big enough company that we don't just hire a bunch of VAs as grunt workers. We hire people as offshore. In our case, the Philippines, but obviously there's a lot of countries that you can do this with. And we ask a lot of them because guess what? They're really smart people. They just happen to live in the Philippines,
Sure.
and so we look for the best. We're very efficient at our hiring process. We're looking for super smart people that have confidence and are willing to ask questions and be curious. So that as they're working with us and we're training them, we want them to move up to a management staff. So they have a path with our company. It's not just, they're working and that they're never going to make any progress. We also have special programs for our staff that I think are unique. We've been told they're unique. We offer them certain holidays per year. They're Philippines holidays. They choose the holidays as a group. They decide which holidays they want. Once they've worked with us long enough, they earn time off, like paid time off. These are all things that most companies don't do with
Right.
offshore workers. So we try to cultivate an environment where it's like we're asking them to work hard and apply themselves, but we're trying to create a culture and an environment that's very attractive, and they know that they have a long-term gig with us. People don't want to work somewhere where they're like, I think they're going to fire me next week. Like business is going down. I might not have a job next week. So they know if they're working with us, we have people that have worked for us for 2 to 3 years, and they just keep working with us and moving up. And that's how I think you also scale as a company, because you have people with a deep knowledge of how we work.
Yeah. And the longer they stay there, I mean, the more skills they're developing, the more bought in they are to the company. That's great. That's
Yeah,
you
but
guys
you
are
have to have systems and processes. Let me tell you, you have to have systems and processes. I hear a lot of times people say like, "Oh, I hired a VA and it didn't work out. Like I couldn't do it, and they just didn't do what I wanted them to do." You have to have systems and processes so you're communicating to them exactly what you want and how you train them and how you structure them and how you make sure that they're doing what they're doing. That goes back to, I think, to Neil and my backgrounds in the IT industry. We're outsourcing we did outsourcing all day long. So when I was running all those teams as a systems architect, I had teams in Russia and teams in multiple places around the world. All of it was outsourcing effectively. So you have to learn how to structure and how to communicate with somebody who you've never seen before and you're not ever going to see effectively. How do you create that relationship and how do you structure the work so that there's benefits on both sides? When somebody doesn't understand, when somebody doesn't perform, I have to look at what I did incorrectly in terms of my communication. How did I contribute to this situation? Did I not provide them with the tools? Did I not provide them with clear instructions? How can I improve so that I can have a better result, either with this person or maybe this person, so that's always something. You have to be humble. And I think there's a lot of people that start using virtual assistants. They're not humble. They look at these people living in these other places and they're judging versus understanding these are human beings that are just as smart as all of us. They just happen to live in a different place. And you just need to, work with them in ways that are compatible.
Yeah, I love that. And that's something that I try to take on as somebody who has employees myself, is that extreme ownership. If they mess up, if they're inefficient, if they drop the ball in some way, I always look for, okay, how could I have helped them to not have dropped it's almost as if I dropped that ball.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Super, super important concept.
That's how you grow your business, is always learning, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, super
impressive. Yeah, I wanted to go back to some of the stuff that you said. I asked this, to a few of our guests, including your buddy Neil. All right, this all sounds great. Everything is good, but you guys are talking about minimum investment of $500,000, and you're working with doctors who make $2 million. So great story, cool story, bro. But I make $50,000 working at Walmart, and I only have $10,000. So I can't even get into some of the seminars because they ask if you are accredited or whatever, right? So then, how do you, a lot of our audience is that younger people who listen to. How do you motivate them? How do you help them to get into the game? Is it best for them to be an active, or do they partner with people?
If someone is not yet accredited, and it is a very important thing in our world, that we mostly work with accredited investors. So an accredited investor is, somebody whose net worth is over $1 million, or who makes, and they can be married and make over $1 million. Their net worth is over $1 million, or they make a certain amount per year. I think it's $350 if $350,000 if they're a couple, and $250 if they're an individual, and they have to have made that money for the last 2 years. Now, we work only with accredited investors at this point, and for one super important reason, because our syndications, because it's accredited only, it's called a 506C type syndication. And what that gives you is it gives you the ability to advertise. So we can do Facebook ads. We can email to all kinds of people. We can blast out to the universe our events that are coming up that are related to a raise. If we were not working with accredited investors, so working with people that are sophisticated is what they call them, or non-accredited, then we would be doing a 506B as in boy, and we cannot advertise. No Facebook ads. We can only email people that we have an existing relationship with, and it has to be an existing relationship that we have documented in our database. Like, I've talked to this person 4 times on the phone. This is how they got to know me. So that can be a really small world, right? But once your database is large enough, so you want to get to the point where you have accredited people in your database, because advertising is how you're really going to build your database, right? So that's the power of accredited. So you don't want to, say, accredited. If you're not accredited, then I encourage you to work as an active investor. Try to, obviously, go to boot camps. Try to become a junior partner with other people so you can learn the ropes and become involved in deals that are, serving accredited. But we stopped doing non-accredited deals many, many years ago, because limiting to your growth of your database, because your database is your gold, right? That's your golden pot. How many people are in your database? So when you have a deal that, you can get some percentage of them to invest with you. So I definitely encourage you to work on accredited as your goal. That's a goal. In the meantime, anyone that's in your database, if you want them to invest with you, you have to have established relationships with them that are documented. So if you got audited by the Security and Exchange Commission, the SAC comes and knocks on your door and they say, here's your list of investors. Show me how you know these people, because somehow they got into you can't just be like, oh, I said something on Facebook and they invested. Doesn't work. Not unless they're accredited. Only if they're accredited, because the SEC, for some reason, thinks that if you're accredited, then you understand how investments and risks work. If you're not accredited and you aren't making that level of money, the SEC is trying to protect those people so that they don't lose their money and can't afford their life. I think they assume if you make enough money, take the risk. Below that, we're going to protect those people. So that's the challenge you have. So I would say be an active investor, because if you can get involved as a passive investor on non-accredited deals, that's the thing. Now, you mentioned, what about people that only have $10,000 to invest? Well, there is a new trend coming up, and it's something to watch, called fractionalization. So you're going to see more and more opportunities where, like, if you look at a site called away.com, and it's something that Jeff Bezos is investing in. And so that's an established website where they are buying single family homes. And I believe they're also buying vacation rentals, and they're fractionalizing it, where you can invest $10,000 into this deal. And so I think you can even invest like $100, really small amounts. So those are things that are becoming more and more popular, and you're going to see it happening much, much more as we move forward, because fractionalization is the democratization of real estate, really. So that people that only make $10,000, that only have $10,000 to invest, they can make good investments. That's where we're going in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, we always say if you're not making that much money, you should really try to fix that to make more money. And almost all of the money that we raised is friends and family we know. So some of them are accredited, but it doesn't matter because we're doing JV deals and it's tenants in common and things like that. So
got it. And that's another great way to go, Ben.
Yeah.
Tenant in common.
Yeah, that's like our specialty. We do all of the deals as TIC, and then we have our own LLC on as the member in the TIC, and they can do whatever they want. And then you don't have to have a separate LLC spitting out partnership returns for these stupid $400,000 houses, So that's another way to do it. But it's very interesting. So the big multifamily we're doing is 506B. So we're just racing a little bit for that. So for people what you're saying is, for people who don't have the accreditation, who don't make that much money, it is better for them to be actively involved to just make a little bit more money, either house.
Yeah, hopefully they can start making more money, and they can be learning in the meantime. So you want to align with someone so that you're actually learning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't have a choice to do much passive investing unless you're just, I guess what they could do is just invest in single family homes, right? So there's no, SEC doesn't have anything to do with that. So as long as it's not a syndication, they don't have to do it. Now, another way is what you mentioned. It could be a tenant in common or a JV, that they could get involved in that. And that can be somewhat active or less active. That's up to the way the deal is structured. But there is no, the SEC is not involved in that, as you know. So that's another way. Now, what you could do if you've got these TIC deals going is you could seek to attract 1031 exchange people. So people that have sold one of their assets, they're looking to do a 1031, they want to land in a TIC. So that is a like-kind exchange for them. That is a valid like-kind exchange for their 1031. So you should be looking to attract those people. It doesn't matter if a 1031 exchange is accredited or not accredited, because it's not governed by the SEC. It's a real estate transaction, right? It's not a partnership transaction. So try to go after 1031 people to bring into your deals. You already got a tick going. They're looking for a tenant in common. You might be able to buy bigger buildings if you can put together a couple of 1031 people, you know?
Yeah, we're actually doing that right now. That's actually a good point. So I kind of manage the money for Drew's family and my family. So we kind of have a bunch of deals here and there. So my sister is selling one of the properties we manage, and I think we have like capital gains, like 100 grand or something. We're going to use that money as a down payment into a tick, buy something for like $1 million in Orange County.
Yep.
So but I've never thought about going after people I don't know about with the 1031. That's
That's
very
different.
interesting.
There you
How
go.
do you
So you
find
can
those people though? How are you farming for those? That's a super niche. Like,
it
give
is
me
a
the
super
answer,
niche.
Shannon.
Well, that's where you do your marketing, and you need to have pages, and you need to have drip campaigns, and you would need to have podcasts. So people that are looking for a 1031 exchange, they're doing a 1031 exchange, they tend to be super, they're driven. It's their life. For 45 days, they are obsessed with finding this. So everything that they can do, so any podcast they see on 1031, they're going to watch it. So I would encourage you to start focusing on providing content. What is a tenant in common? How can a tenant in common work for 1031 people? I will tell you that I am a 1031 queen. I have done, I think, 10 1031s at this point in my life. And several of those were before I got together with Neil. And then I, with my background and experience in 1031s, brought that into our business. So we do 1031s into syndication. People can 1031 and purchase townhouses from us. We do 1031s all the time.
Nice.
Yeah, it becomes a little bit more complex if you want to do a syndication structure with 1031 because they got to be on title and all that crap, right?
Oh, well, it's a tenant in common. It's not that different than what you're doing. So besides, there's a syndication that's your limited partnership, right? That's your LLC, and then you have a separate structure that's your tenant in common. So two separate structures. It is more expensive because your lawyer's got to create two different sets of docs. The other thing that you have to watch out for tenant in common is when you're getting a loan, everybody that's in that tenant in common, because they're co-owners, they actually own a percentage of the real estate, they have to sign on the loan.
Yes.
So even if they didn't bring any debt into it, the lender wants everybody that's involved to sign on that loan. So that's why when we're doing a 1031, like tenant in common scenario, even if it's a huge project, we can only take like 5 tenant 1031 people. So you can imagine when we're looking for a 1031 person, we can only take 5 of them. We're looking for $500K and above, or $1 million and over. We can't take somebody that's got $25,000 in a 1031 because it doesn't. There's too much paperwork. It's too involved, and so even though it doesn't require them to be accredited because it's a real estate transaction, because the lender's involved and there's all of this extra work, they probably are accredited because our minimums are so high.
Hey, what about my cousin who's got 10,000 to 1031? That's a good point. Actually, it depends on the lender. So I know you're talking more commercial. So we did recently a 1031 we sold some crap in Bakersfield and we bought something in Inland Empire. It was like 600. We put like 200 down, but 150 or something came from Drew and me. So the loan was on, I think it's Drew's name, but we had another person who was our partner. And for the 1031 people, all they have to see is you have to be on title. They don't care about the loan. So the lender says, hey, I don't care about this other guy. Then
I think that might be a residential thing, but a commercial lender, there's a lot more requirements involved. I won't go into the details. That's a whole show in itself.
I know that's the host. But thanks for giving us that information. So I might
go after those 1031 guys.
Yeah,
you're solving a problem for them, right? They need to land somewhere. So solve their problem.
That's win-win.
It's a win-win.
So we have to just we just have to have like for listeners who are listening, Anna's got such a good landing page and all the things you guys do that you can actually just be like, you know what, accredited or leave, right? And we can't because we're not on that level. So we have to go after, people who are also, and plus I want to take on my sister, my sister is accredited, but let's say my sister or some other person. We want to also use them, make them be part of things too. So for the next step, so you would say that for people who are listening, who are just starting out and have a few deals here and there, you would have to build your audience by giving value then, right? By
Yes,
seminars,
build your
meetups
audience
and
by
stuff.
giving value, and try and find a niche, right? Like we talked about the 1031 niche, find a niche that you can attract people to, that you can differentiate yourself, and that you can help provide a win-win situation for people. That's always going, because don't just do the same thing that everybody else is doing out there. You're going to get lost in the crowd. There's so much out there right now that it's hard to stand out. But if you are continually looking to solve people's problems and differentiate, that's going to be a good thing. And remember, it's all about the journey. So, it's going to take a while. You're going to be learning every step of the way. Again, the first couple of years at Grocapitus, I was learning so much. And of course, I'm still learning. I mean, it's an incredible place to work because we learn so much all the time. But I didn't have any money, But you have to be patient with multifamily, because when you're a general partner, right, the cash flow is not coming. The reward is coming later. So you have to open your mind to your rewards can include all of the stuff you're learning, and every part of the process is your reward. Not just about money. People think they're going to get involved in commercial real estate and they're going to be like, flashing dollars, It takes time, but it will come, and the results are very substantial.
My last question, I promise, before we let you go, is the current market conditions and where you see the market going, and how are you still playing the game when cap rates are still, not decompressing as much as we would like because the debt has changed and all that. So do you still recommend people who are experienced to play along? And what about new investors? Is this even a good time for them to get in?
I think this is okay. So where do we think? So we believe that, interest rates will continue to climb for now. The inflation is nowhere near under control. We think that the Fed, which is their job, is to continue raising interest rates to try to bring it under control. We think that this is not something that's going to go on for years. This will be a temporary measure. This is a forced measure. Cap rates are being forced to go up. So once the inflation, once the Fed determines that they've had their impact, interest rates are going to start to go back down. So what are we doing right now? We are currently just focused on our existing projects. We are taking a couple months off of. We're still looking at acquisitions, but it has to be an extreme unicorn that lands on our desk. We think cap rates are going to continue to go up, which means prices are going to continue to go down. Now, a lot of the increase in cap rate has happened in multifamily. I think single family is still trailing. So look out that single family, it's kind of harder for them to accept that their house isn't worth what they think it is. But commercial real estate, they respond very quickly. So I still think that there's room for commercial real estate prices to go down more, and we will be ready. So what are we doing in the meantime? We have a Grocapitus income fund, a value add income fund. So we have one asset that we closed on that we haven't had a great discount on. It was, I think we ended up getting like a 20%, a significant discount off of the pricing, not 20%, but it was a significant discount off the pricing. So we felt good about that acquisition, but we are now gathering funds to buy 2 to 3 more assets. And we're looking, but we don't think it's going to probably be January or February before we think the market is going to be the right to pounce. So we're gathering the money and ready to pounce on those other assets. So should people get in now? You should be learning now. You should be looking at deals now. Look at as many deals as you can. If you're underwriting these days, if you're practicing your underwriting, practice. But it's got to be a really significant deal for you to go all in right now. It's very hard with the debt markets. The interest rates keep going up. It's very volatile out there with debt. We actually had an asset that was going to be part of the income fund. We actually had it under contract, and we let it go because the debt was too volatile. So if you can imagine, shown up was all ours, great asset. We really liked it. But when we were trying to size the debt and figure out where we were going to be on interest rates, it wasn't going to happen. It's also a very challenging environment to raise money in right now. Investors are very skittish, even though multifamily is the best hedge against inflation that you could get, because people always need a place to live. There's not enough housing. It's not going to be solved anytime soon. So we fully believe in multifamily, but it is one of the more challenging times to raise money that we've experienced. So if you get yourself in a situation where you've got 60 days to close on this asset and you need to raise, $2 million, $3 million, it may be a challenge. And, you don't want to be in a situation where you're going to lose out on your, earnest money that went hard, and you're going to lose out on $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 of your hard-earned money because you couldn't raise the rest of the money in time. It's a challenging environment right now. So, but we don't think it's going to last forever. We think, this is late October, so we're just about to hit November. We're looking at maybe 2 more months of this, and then things are going to start to switch over. So maybe take a nice vacation and be nice and collected and calm for Jan, Feb. We're digging in on all of our existing projects and making sure that everything is ship shape on our existing portfolio, really spending a lot of time on that. And that's what we're doing right now.
Maybe
we've got lots going on
in a market that you're looking into.
Yes. Take a nice
Florida,
vacation in a market you're looking into. That's a great idea. Yeah, we also have a lot of development projects going on, and development is a long game. So those projects, when you buy the land, it's 2 years before you even get, everything done. So we certainly have lots to work on in the meantime. So we've still been buying land.
Nice. Wow. So
very cool.
Yeah, man, we covered a lot. I love it. We hit a lot of things. I apologize. I want to wrap here pretty soon. Respect your time. just for the audience. You initially got into real estate for tax reasons, which I think is awesome, and I think it's hilarious. What are those tax reasons? Like, what drew you into this whole game? Why the complete life and career shift?
Yeah. Well, because with depreciation, so what you can get with real estate is the magic of depreciation. And so as an owner of real estate, and you can be an owner through a syndication, you own a share of real estate. As a syndication investor of a large asset, you own a piece of that, right? So you invest your $50,000 with the depreciation of that building. Right now we have what's called 100% bonus depreciation. That's going to fade out next year and go into 80%. What happens is when you buy a building, you do a cost segregation. Okay, a cost segregation expert comes in, they analyze all of the bits and pieces of the building, and they say, these things are going to basically need to be replaced in 5 years. These things are going to need to be replaced in 15 years. These things are going to need 27.5 years. And they come up with this formula where it's the value of the asset, not including the land, because you can't depreciate land. And they come up with a formula of how much you can depreciate. Now, in the CARES Act that was enacted in, I believe, 2020, there is 100% bonus depreciation that is still through 2022. So what that means is from that cost seg study, you can take all of the value that's in the 5-year bucket and all of the value that's in the 15-year bucket, which tends to be about 30% of the total depreciable asset, and you can take it all in year one. So that means that you can have a huge amount of a depreciation, and that depreciation comes to what your taxable income, the depreciation goes against that. So it reduces your taxable income. So I'm not a CPA, so it's something that people need to explore on their own. And that's one of the subject matters that we actually have a lot of CPAs that come onto our educational platform and talk about these types of things. Because each person needs to understand based on the type of job they have, whether they're W-2, whether they could qualify as a real estate professional, which is another whole ball of wax. That's like the golden ticket. And so how much you can depreciate off of your income. With real estate, there are so many loopholes that are completely legal. You can be making lots of money and be paying no taxes legally.
Yeah.
So that's how I think real estate investors, that's why I think people are so drawn to it. I also, so many people that have, that are high net worth people, so many people that are in Congress, they are avid real estate investors. It should be part of everybody's portfolio. And the tax advantages are insane. And part of the reason it's so insane is because so many people in Congress are real estate investors.
Yep.
And so many high net worth are real estate investors, and they are lobbying Congress to maintain these things like 1031 and, like all these things that are going through. So I seek to take advantage of every legal avenue I can to reduce on my taxes. And, and so real estate turns out to be something I enjoy as well. But that's why I switched. And you're right, I did a complete life change. But the other thing that real estate gave me, and the other thing I was looking for, is the freedom to work from wherever I want. Yeah. So at the time when I was a photographer, that's a very localized market thing. And at that time I was still raising my children, and they were in school, et cetera. But my husband and I didn't want to be tied to any location. So I specifically pivoted to real estate, and intentionally a real estate company that was completely remote. That was my, it had to be completely remote, so I could live anywhere. And since then, I have moved out of California. We were nomadic for a few years, living in different cities, basically living in Airbnbs. We've got a transit van. We just move our stuff from place to place. Now we have established footholds in Seattle on the West Coast and Florida on the East Coast. So you can really create the lifestyle you want when you have a career that allows you to work remotely and make good money. And that, I believe, is what real estate can give you, is the freedom to do that. And it's a pretty great life.
That's like the best of both worlds. You're making high income. Sure, you're working hard, but you're high income. You have a great lifestyle. You get to travel, see the world. And you have these amazing tax benefits, which essentially wipes out your income. I'm not going to ask you what your last year's tax bill was, but I'm sure it was way lower than most people would assume with someone with that many units and that insane.
It's almost unfair, but it's completely legal. So since the laws are there, you need to learn how to take advantage of them.
And I like to always argue, some people talk about that and they're like, oh, it's not fair. Like, they're not paying any taxes. And I'm like, yeah, but we're providing jobs. We're stimulating the economy. We're improving homes. We're improving areas.
Providing housing. Remember, we're builders. We're building houses. Yeah.
And providing better housing than usually when we got it. We're trying to fix things up. So that's great. Wow. Sorry, we've taken up way more of your time than we usually do with our guests. So I want to let you go. I'm always super curious, though. I feel like every dollar I've ever made has come from one of two things. One of those things being knowledge. What books might you recommend for someone like myself or just anyone looking to invest or go next level?
We just had Jay Scott on. So I'm a big fan of Jay Scott. And he just put out a new book. I think it's called Real Estate by the Numbers. I'm a numbers person, and that's what drives me. So I would recommend that people get a hold of that book. And, on the webinar, it was very clear that he was explaining, and this book, I'm sure, does this in a very extensive manner. What are all of the different return metrics? What is average annualized return? What is internal rate of return? What is equity multiple? These are like mystery numbers for people. But this book will break it down for you in such a way that you really understand it. And it's really important to understand the world of real estate is based on numbers and valuation. So I highly recommend that book and building a knowledge base around what is the numbers of real estate.
Got it. Awesome. Thank you for that recommendation.
Just picked up that book from me yesterday.
Yeah.
What's that?
That's the book you picked up. Yeah, we know Jay Scott too. He's gonna come on the podcast soon too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Great
he's
guy.
awesome. Yeah, he's really great.
Yep. Sitting
Thanks,
on my
Anna.
counter.
If anybody wants to get a hold of you, what is the best way to reach you?
The best way to reach me is through my grocapitus.com. So you can always email me at Anna, ANNA, at grocapitus.com. That's GRO. Oh, let me go
CAPIPUS.com.
GROCAPITUS. So that's my email address. But grocapitus.com, our website, has, of course, a lot of our deals that we have going on. But the other thing that people should really take advantage of is our free webinars. So we every week, maybe 3 times a month, on multifamilyu.com. So multifamily, just like you would spell it, u.com, no dashes or anything. You can subscribe and basically come and learn with us. It's free. We have all kinds of guests, like Jay Scott was just on like 2 nights ago with me. And then Neil and I also do a lot of presentations. So completely free knowledge. Most of it is very data oriented, a lot about taxes, depreciation, syndications, like how does all this stuff work? So yeah, great place to learn.
Love it.
Thank you so much, Anna.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah,
We got
talk to
so
you
much
soon.
out of it.